I am Claudio Avella. I'm from Italy. I've been traveling the last 10 months in Nepal, India, and 2 months ago, almost 2 months ago, I arrived in Pakistan. I started traveling after quitting my job. I'm an environmental engineer, and I worked for 7 years in education about environmental sustainability and regenerative economy. That means a model of economy that should generate positive impact instead of negative impact, at least in the balance between positive and negative impacts. And I was working in education, so with schools, with kids from kindergarten till university, mainly with students from 14, 16 years old to 18, 19 years old, and also with companies, so with small or big companies that want to change their model, their business model. It was in Italy. And at one point I decided to quit my job and started traveling, and the turning point has been my trip to Palestine. It was the first trip was in 2022, the second one was in 2023 in August, so 1 month, a little bit more than 1 month before 7th of October and the genocide that we are witnessing these days. And the turning point about this trip in Palestine, has been because I really could touch with my hands in that very small experience that I had. It was 1 month in 2022, 1 month in 2023, so it's very small experience. But I could really touch with myself, with my hands. I could see, I could witness it. And it was much more powerful than any paper, any article, any book, any movie that I could see, I could watch, I could read about what colonialism is. And in that case, it is settlement colonialism. That means colonialism of people that decide to grab a land and kick out all the native people. That is what is in the last 8 years has been done in Palestine. Well, more than 8 years, because it started much before than the establishment of the Israel state. And it's something that is ongoing. And we're seeing it in Gaza in these days, but also in West Bank. Not only because of the violent war and the genocide, but also from the statements of Israeli politicians, Israeli journalists, Netanyahu, the prime minister, that they are, and the ministers like Ben Gvir, that are constantly saying that they're going to put settlements in Gaza once they will wipe out all the people that are there. And at the same time, they're saying that they are fighting against Hamas. But it seems much like an excuse when actually you analyze things on the ground. And I want to add one thing about this, what's happening in Palestine. It has nothing to do with religion. It's about the land. It's about the native people and the right of the people to live in that land with their full rights recognized. Whoever are their neighbors. I mean, that it means that I don't think, but this is me. I mean, it should be the Palestinians that should decide. I don't think that all the Israelis should go away from Palestine, for example, from Israel, whatever it is. I mean, historical Palestine. I don't know if, at least I don't know if this is the solution. I think basically that everybody should live there recognizing each other's human rights, basic rights. And the first right to be recognized there is the right to return to their lands. Because 750,000 people fled their houses in 1948, and still nowadays they are refugees. Despite the fact that the UN released a resolution that was asking Israel to recognize the right to return to their lands to all the refugees.
Okay,
now the refugees are 6 million.
Don't you think that we are like, kind of missing the point? We are conflating two different phenomena. The Israeli issue, the Palestinian issue, and I was actually talking about colonialism. 18th century onward colonialism.
Kind of colonialism.
So and I was talking about that.
Yes.
And later on, and also imperialism. There is like a difference between imperialism and colonialism. But again, I would not like to go into the nuances, and I would like to use these two terms interchangeably, and I will go with the popular meanings of the term. We're coming back to my statement, that especially English colonialism, which was very much kind of widespread and deep-rooted, and the way the so-called anti-colonialists, the Marxist elite and the ethno-nationalist elite have been misusing this anti-colonial discourse in order to subjugate their own people. So colonialism was, in fact, neither objectively nor subjectively that horrible. It was having legitimacy, and when we evaluate, when we assess or put some value judgment on colonialism, it is always from this modern Wilsonian liberal worldview, right? That we judge colonialism as a horrible thing. Again, this very anti-colonial discourse is liberal in its character. Liberal, and I would also say some very vulgar postmodernists sitting in both in the West and in the East. And the liberal apologists, they would be saying, this colonialism. Yeah, colonialism was a factor. It is a very significant factor in history. But that is not the only factor.
I think that there is much confusion.
And blowing things out of proportion, politicizing it, has actually not contributed to the third world progress and development. Actually, it has been used by these nationalist elites and these leftist elites. They have been using this anti-colonial discourse, and when they are criticizing colonialism, they would be borrowing from liberalism. Yeah, Leninist approach to imperialism makes sense. I'm not going in that direction. So this is my point actually. So I would not conflate, what Israel is doing. Israel is doing it in the 21st century, where the Wilsonian ideals in the form of the UN have been firmly established. And colonialism happened in 17th, 16th century,
Can you repeat the same
where
statement?
we didn't have.
Can you repeat the same statement, the last statement?
Yeah. So what Israel is doing is in 21st century, where we have Wilsonian ideals being institutionalized, where the global order is not that Hobbesian, that state of nature that we used to live, say for instance in the Middle Ages. There was no, Westphalia. There was no, and the Westphalian model didn't go beyond Europe. So colonization was not a horrible thing, it was a normal thing. And every powerful nation, more civilized, would conquer other nations because, and some people would say, oh, the Westerners came and they occupied our lands. and they took away our freedoms. Which freedoms you are talking about? We didn't have any freedom, and the freedom that you are talking about is actually liberalism. This is from a liberal perspective that you are, like criticizing colonialism.
Okay, let me go to the point. But just going back to what I was saying, why it was a turning point, that thing, it's also because in that small piece of land, I could see what I've been reading, not only about Palestine, but I was knowing not only about Palestine, but about what every kind of colonialism was. That is about supremacy of just one part of the population. So it is just at small scale what happens in the global order.
Yeah.
Supremacy of one part of the population, backed economically and by big powers, interests in the land and in the resources, and we see it from the fact that actually Israel is grabbing not only the land but also the water. If you go in the West Bank, in the Jordan Valley, where water is quite scarce, in the settlements they have a quantity of water that is 6-7, they consume daily a quantity of water that is 6-7 times what is consumed in London. Okay, because they have swimming pools and so on, while Palestinians don't have the water because they grab all the springs. Palestinians, workers, a regular contract. Every time that they travel, they have to pass multiple checkpoints. And if they find a checkpoint that is closed, they have to go to another checkpoint. So they start traveling maybe at 4 in the morning. And this is what's happening in Europe with all the migrants that come to Europe from Africa, from Pakistan, from Asia, and they want to search for a job. Okay. So all these examples of what is this global order of the colonialist, of liberal imperialism, or whatever it is, it was very clear there. And the other thing that was very clear to me is that in Europe, we have a very biased narrative and mindset about all these things. And me, this is another premise that I need to so during this debate, I know that whatever I say will be highly biased about what is liberalism and what is freedom or what are human rights or whatever, because all these concepts have been invented in my part of the world, that is Europe, the United States, and so on, the Western world. So, of course, my struggle during my trip is actually about understanding
something that you, something here saying that, you know, these liberal values invented in their part. Yeah, that's very much true. And through colonialism and through various other means, you know, the forces of globalization, we have also received them very positively, you know. All of, you know, our formal systems and things like we are mimicking, and you know, our order, you know, our traditional orders, they have failed us.
Yes,
this is truth. And when it comes to, you know, like things that can, you are lucky enough that you have enjoyed human rights, freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
Why should you be like, you know, so ungrateful to your forefathers and to, you know, like...
I'm not ungrateful.
Yeah. So, I mean, we haven't enjoyed these rights, and this is what we have been craving for. And the reason for our underdevelopment is this, not the only reason. Look, I don't believe in monocausal arguments. I don't believe in single axis explanations. And I don't believe in linear processes either, right? I look at things and see things within their context. So within their context, yes, colonialism was, again, not only a very significant historical event, but also has contributed a lot to humanity. Now, when I say it has contributed to humanity. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by human? That is the main question, right? By human, I mean a speaking being. And this very nature of this speaking being has been liberated by these liberal values. Unfortunately, our traditional order and the Mughal Empire that we had over here, Alamgir, Flana and Dinga, and then and we are lamenting the English people or the some other nations occupying us. We need to be a bit, very clear about this. I'm not apologetic about it. And some people would say, like, what the heck he's talking about, sitting in, Peshawar among ethno-nationalists and leftists and saying these things. Yes, we need to think, things that sound unconventional, unorthodox. Now, yes, it is very appealing here, talking to the masses over here, externalizing the threat. Look, they are responsible for us. This is what we have been doing, externalizing we are also responsible for things that we have, the horrible things that we had been doing to ourselves. One more thing I must add to it, that in the beginning, and especially talking about the English colonialism, it was welcomed by Indians. It was at very last stage. And again, thanks to the English institutions that they introduced over here, the local councils, the elections, the secular attitudes, banning sati, banning various other anti-human, from today's vantage point, anti-human practices. People welcomed English over here. It was at the latter stage that we see a very strong Congress, a very strong Khudai Khidmatgar. But the Khudai Khidmatgar, the Congress, and all these, institutions, values and practices, they brought these things with them. Otherwise, we would be using, guns and sticks to, we look, this is not, I'm not, some people can't think counterfactually, right? Some people would say, look, if colonialism had not happened to us, we would have done this and that. Yes, look at those parts of the world where there was no direct colonialism, right? Including China, right? And again, sitting over here, our left, they would be saying, look, these Western literature, Western epistemology, these things have been, shaping our mindset, and, we can't think for ourselves as if we are not human beings, right? So, such kind of conspiratorial thinking is actually not contributing to our emancipatory
I don't think that
practices.
There is no conspiratory thinking. I mean, you said that colonialism. I don't remember the exact statement, but you said something like colonialism brought.
Would you please give me like one line
Yes,
statement?
please.
One line,
Yes.
just one line
Yes,
statement. Before the English came over here, we believe that, they took our freedom. Pashtun's freedom, say for instance, or, Indians' freedom. Which freedom you are talking about? Were Indians free? No. They were, colonized by whom? By the Central Asian Mongols, and then Ghaznavi and Ahmad Shah Abdali, we Pashtun nationalists, we do romanticize him for occupying Indian lands, right? But we would not have the courage to appreciate, by the same token, some other people having some higher values and civilization. And I'm very much clear about the definition of what is higher. If we have time and if you want to explain this thing, what do I mean by more civilized and less civilized people, I'm very clear about
Anyway,
these things.
it's very strange to hear something like that from a person that is from Pakistan, because what I know about what the British and the French and the Belgian, the Spanish, the Portuguese and Italians did in the countries that we colonized was actually killing a lot of people, taking the resources. Let me finish, please, because I want to. Taking the resources and deciding who has the right to liberalize, to be liberal, to have a certain economical wealth, and who is not, by means of religion, culture, skin color, and so on. We did it in Rwanda, where there was the Hutu and Tutsi massacre. We did it in India, where now the Muslims are very much oppressed, and where people where the caste system was very much stressed in order to give certain positions in the administration of the country to certain people. It happened here in Pakistan, where the Hindus fled after the partition, and where the Pakistani establishment was very afraid of the Hindus fleeing to India, because all the administrative skills were only for the Hindus. So this is what colonialism is. That is dividing the society in those people that have some rights and those people that don't have some rights.
Look, it was a divided society. You know, have you heard the word?
Have you heard Aurangzeb Alamgir? For 20 minutes, so I would like to finish. I would like to finish.
It was a divided society.
Yeah, it was dividing.
And principalities fighting against one another. There was no single state.
No, please let me finish. Let me finish, because you have this habit of interrupting people. You make questions and then and then you let people. So let me finish. And so this is happening still nowadays, because to which I belong to is deciding who has some rights and who doesn't. So going back to Palestine, I learned one very important concept, that is double standard. Double standard means that I recognize that somebody in the world has certain human rights, even the right to defend itself violently, but other people don't have the same right, because they have a different religion, because they are different from who is ruling the world. Then going back to what is my background, that is the environmental background. What does the liberal, capitalist, consumeristic world did to the planet is depleting, that it is completely exploiting the natural resources of our planet.
Should I say one thing?
No. Let me finish. And doing it not in our countries, in our lands, in our areas, but doing it in Africa, in Asia, in South America, where we establish certain rules by means of World Trade Union or the World Bank and all these big institutions that were, for example, in South America, they were advising the states to privatize. And what happened that American big companies bought big portions of lands that were not used by the locals for agriculture, for example.
Because they couldn't use it.
Argentina.
They couldn't use it.
No, there is one thing. You said, what kind of freedom? There is one freedom. There is the freedom of self-determining itself.
And it's Wilsonian ideal.
Self-determination.
So this is a Wilsonian ideal, liberal ideal.
No. Because colonialism is a violent way of exporting certain ideas and actually exporting only to some part of the society, while exchange of culture by means of commerce, of traveling, that is what happened in history. Always is a way to make certain ideas
Okay.
to enter in certain other cultures
May I
and
answer
may
your-
let these cultures to determine what they want to become.
Okay, may I say? Oh. The first thing is that capitalism has been, threatening environment and things like that. Humans have always feared new science and new technology, and they have always resisted it. If you go back, look, if you happen to watch movies from 1950s, 60s, and 70s, Indian movies, you would see this, anti-progress, anti-development discourse or outlook, reflected in them. Humans have always feared, and especially, the elite, those who control the status quo. They are always afraid of new things, new technology. One thing. Second, humans, if you stop humanity from thinking new things and making new change, new innovations, I can guarantee you that within 100 years, humans as a race will be perished by natural forces. Along with this technology, you have always to renovate technology. Humans are, thinking beings, speaking beings who are capable by the virtue of their speech, not thinking, speech, to transform the universe around them. And Rand would say that there is one difference between, the modern and the caveman. The caveman lacked human capital, which is mind, science, new language. And the modern man has this tool, human capital, human mind, science, language. So modern man, and the more we are afraid of AI and things like that, and some people like Harare would be, warning us. Yes, that's true. We should always be suspicious of whatever we are doing, and there must be some social public control. I don't believe in, complete free social media, things like that. One thing. So capitalism is what is good about liberalism. I'm talking about liberalism. There could be capitalism without liberalism, but you can't have liberalism without capitalism. So you must know these things. So
I think this is a dichotomy that is very simple.
Look, China is not a liberal system.
Simplification that I cannot accept.
China is not a liberal system, but it's a capitalist society.
So you're talking about innovation.
Iran,
you're talking
Saudi
about
Arabia,
innovation without having the imagination of thinking that there can be an innovation that is not that simple. I mean, you're just saying if it's not capitalism, it's China. I mean, we can create different.
You are misreading me. You are misreading me, actually.
No.
Unfortunately, my English is not that good.
No, my English.
There to convey my message very clearly. But I'm saying that you can have a capitalist system without having a liberal political order.
That is
But you can't have a liberal political order without having a free market. This is what I'm saying, right? Now, how free the market is, that is another question. So, what is good about liberalism? Liberalism gives you the opportunity to question what is considered sacred, officially sanctioned. But a country like China, having control over society and state, a single political party, and also a very controlled so-called capitalist market, you don't have any freedoms, but you can't question Chinese industrial policy. You can't question, the orders being done to proletariat. You know who exploited the proletariat, the working class more? It's the Marxists, the left, the so-called communists and socialists. This is like an elite appealing to, I would not go into that direction, and whatever. So, coming back to another point, when it comes to interventions, yes, I am not a pacifist. Pacifist means I can't see my neighbor, say for instance, torturing his family, doing domestic violence. If I have power, I will definitely stop him doing that. Right? Because humans are moral beings. Everyone is a colonialist and imperialist, and we cannot, in a Hobbesian world, we can't have order without having a policeman. One thing, what kind of policeman would you like? A benign one or a very, crude, corrupt one? A policeman that is very benign. That is an ideal that we live without any policeman. And yes, I would love to see a very democratic global order. I would love to see, this current UN system being changed and to more democratic direction. But intervention becomes inevitable. Tsars was an empire, the Russian Empire. Ottoman was an empire. The Arabs had empires, Iranians had empires, Romans had empires, and then we had the English Empire, and then we had American current empire, right? Unfortunately, again, we are living in a semi-anarchic world. So someone would ultimately emerge to fill the vacuum. No, what kind of a policeman would you like to fill the vacuum? Then we have the liberal policeman, a better option.
Okay. I think there is some confusion about certain concepts, and the first thing is that you say that who oppressed the most the working class? It was the Marxists or the communists, or in any way the communist countries. I mean, I wouldn't say that China is a communist country.
No, it is not a communist.
It is not.
Politically, it is.
I would agree.
Economically, not.
I would agree within a certain threshold that market is a good thing in the sense of entrepreneurship and of the people, so the capacity of people of creating their own activity and creating products, creating services for other people by means of what is needed by the society. That is not what the market today is actually providing to humanity. And the other thing is that if we say that who exploited the most the working class is the communist regimes, yes, in their own homes. But if we think about imperialism, is about exploiting the working class in other countries and establishing dictatorships in other countries. That is what the United States have been doing since the Second World War on. In South America, in Afghanistan, when they decided that they had to fund and finance the Taliban because in order to defend from Russia, and is what they have been doing during the Cold War everywhere. Let's say in Vietnam, they saying to their citizens that they were going in war in Vietnam to defend their own citizens. Now tell me how.
Okay, let me give you this example of Afghanistan, because you refer to it.
Yes.
You know what? Yes, America intervened in Afghanistan and supported the Islamists. The Islamists was Gulbuddin Hekmatyar and these people who later became Democrats and allies to the United States, right? Actually, Taliban are not the product of the United States, right? Keep this thing in mind. The Gulbuddin Hekmatyar and these people, they were supported, obviously, yeah. But a lesser evil against a bigger evil. The Sor Inqilab, the Sor revolution that happened in Afghanistan, it was more repressive. It was very, kind of inhuman as compared to what Gulbuddin Hekmatyar professed. Gulbuddin Hekmatyar would be, like the leading Mujahideen leader in Afghanistan during the Cold War. Why I'm saying this? Because I believe that Islam is a text. It's kind of a postmodern thinking, post-structural thinking. As a text, is more flexible than Das Kapital and Communist Manifesto. Given the origin of the two, Islam as a code has evolved over centuries, right? Now you have various Islams. The Taliban of 90s would be very different from the Taliban of today. This much has it evolved. And the Gulbuddin, who didn't believe in democracy, became a champion of democracy. And Karzai, who was fighting against the communists, who was part of the Mujahideen camp, became the first president. And all these peoples, they fought against the communists because the communist regime was a very repressive regime. You know about Stalinism, right? You know about Mao's Cultural Revolution. Is being committed by the Cuban people, to the Cuban people. So in North Korea, still you look at North Korea, compare North Korea with South Korea, right? So again, coming back to this point, then came the United States back after 9/11, and we the nationalists had the United States coming here. Right? And every nationalist had been shocked, and still in reaction to this act of withdrawal from Afghanistan, every nationalist is now thinking in anti-American terms, because they think that America has abandoned us. Now, if really, actually, like for the last 20 years, America had control of Afghanistan. That is very much true. They were running it. Everything was in the control of America. Now we have the control. The Pashtuns, looking like Pashtuns, having big turbans, speaking Pashto, having big beards, and living like a Pashtun, and very masculine people, they are living, now ruling us. Right? Didn't you see people hanging by the wheels and what do they call, wings of the planes, right? People running out of Afghanistan. Have you ever seen, the Europeans and American immigrants, entering our borders through, these risky ways? We are doing this. Our youth is doing this. They are running from us. This is an objective truth of that. And why do I say that colonialism was subjectively good, legitimate? In colonial India, people from the peripheries would be, rushing towards the colonial centers. 4 of my great-grandfathers, they were part of the British Army. And they fought against the Ottoman Turkey. 2 of them got killed in them. And then my grandfather and his brothers. And we see people, the resistance that came in the form of, later on in the form of Gandhiji's struggle and, these democratic struggles and peaceful struggles, they were very much different from this today's narrow nationalism. And again, it was a very later stage when people learned what does self-government means. Right to self-determination is an alien term back in 19th century Peshawar. There was no such thing as self-rule. These boundaries, we didn't have any Westphalian agreement. Neither was it existent in South Africa. There were, internal colonizations would be going on, and an extreme form of patriarchy, sati, having a woman being burnt on the pyre of their deceased husband.
Yes, but you are idealizing European society.
No, I'm not.
As if in history, in our history,
you were worse than us.
Okay.
You were worse than us. And medieval ages, you were very horrible people.
You
would be burning people alive. I'm not commending that.
But you're actually saying that we were able to self-determine our societies.
No,
but,
you were lucky
but
enough
you were not.
You were lucky enough.
But
you
actually,
were lucky enough to see the dawn before us. This is what I'm saying.
Anyway,
you saw the dawn before us.
I think that you said something like my grandparents were in the army, so people in the colonial era were migrating from the peripheric areas to the central areas, so it was good for everybody. No, it was just the example of your family. So.
Not just my family, they know me.
Oh.
I am from the periphery, I am bordering Afghanistan. My family is living on the borders and in the mountains, very far from area. So you just imagine a person from Tira getting, a job or seeking job in Delhi, and Delhi's military, I mean the British Indian military, they didn't have anything. It was a subsistence economy, tribalism, extreme kind of...
It is something that was valid for certain people and not for the rest. This is the thing. This is when I say the double standard. Or this is what I mean when I say that not everybody has the same benefits from a certain order like this one. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, in Italy, we have a say about Mussolini and fascism. Do you know who was Mussolini? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So the fascists used to say Mussolini did also good things. Of course. But that doesn't mean that fascism was a good thing.
No, it was not.
So then, this is the thing. You cannot just take some examples of some things that were good in a certain regime and say then the regime and then save the whole regime. I think this is quite problematic.
Look what I'm saying.
And
objectively, looking objectively, right? Just think of our society, right? What it would look like back in 17th century and 18th century, 19th century, right? The way it looks like now. Just think of our society. Had colonialism not happened over here, right? I'm not saying that, look, one thing, stop thinking or evaluating colonialism from the 1945 Wilsonian order when it was established, the collective security order, open diplomacy, things like that, and from this, not from this perspective, in its context, I'm talking about that. The moral high ground that we are taking while evaluating colonialism in retrospect is actually liberal. This is what I'm trying to say.
It's not. I mean, it was liberal for somebody, but not for everybody.
Okay.
There was always some animals that were more animals than animals.
One clarification. In international relations, actually liberalism was introduced, following World War I. these are actually Wilsonian ideals, and not just before that the 30 Years War, and then the European wars, and then happened the Congress of Vienna, and I hope I'm not confusing the events, but in truly international global sense, liberalism was introduced by the US President Wilson, right? Following World War I. And following that, the League of Nations was established, which is a liberal ideal again. Now, unfortunately, the United States didn't sign it. Why they didn't sign it? Because they were still thinking in terms of isolation from the continental issues and the global issues. That was a big mistake the United States did make. And then we saw the World War II. And again, this is the world would realize that yes, the Wilsonian ideals are. But before that, when English was colonizing these parts of the world, I mean Americas, I mean Africa, I mean Asia, then although the British had a relatively liberal system, but in terms of its international behavior, global behavior, it was not liberal. They were following, this Hobbesian model. They were dealing with Napoleonic France and post-Napoleonic France. They would be dealing with, the Tsars, Russia. They would be dealing with, the divided German principalities, weak principalities. And then they would be, so the whole game would be, balance of power game. It was not a liberal outlook. The liberal thing, the liberal element was introduced in the very beginning, I mean the second decade of 20th century. So I'm talking about that liberalism and international relations. Yeah, I would like to have it is in order. Unfortunately, we have not, as humanity, we have not been able to evolve a common reason, a common kind of, grounds to stand on while dealing with each other. And this is why we are having, this Ukrainian things and, this mess going on in Middle East.
You were mentioning.
And one yes, last statement that I would like to make. Democracies do not fight wars against each other. This is Wilsonian ideal, this is, actually Kantian ideal, democratic peace theory. But when it comes to dealing with playing dirty games with dirty people, then democracies are far better and more resilient fighting dirty games with dirty people. And America or the West has done this. Yes, in Vietnam they have done this. And in Afghanistan they have done this. And in Africa they have done this. And Latin America, yes, they have done this. Yes, against Che Guevara and these people. They have done this. And this is not something to be, to feel guilty about, no. Why should I succumb to Stalinism? And why should people be subjected to, the rule by fear, rule by gun, rule through gun?
Yeah, my point is that what you're saying that is rule by gun, rule by fear, it is being used and established also by the Western democracy all over the world. I mean, you have been mentioning so many communist countries where actually there was not a liberal society. There is not still a liberal society. There is in the sense of freedom of each individuals, but all the attempts of creating a socialist democracy in the world have been killed by the United States, killed literally, because Salvador Allende killed himself during the coup made by Augusto Pinochet was backed and supported by the United States because it was a socialist that won democratically the elections. So we didn't have even the chance to see a socialist democracy. Anyway, I think that this is the point that I was trying to mention before, that we can imagine, create, and innovate the current systems towards something that is different now. Because if I think about liberal democracies in the world nowadays, they exist and they can survive because they exploit other countries in the world. Other countries' resources, like it happens in Africa, and also by means of establishing
very conspiratorial thinking.
Let me finish. Establishing certain certain regimes, like it happened with the Taliban's, or by doing business with certain people, certain countries that now they are considered enemies. Let's talk about Putin. For 20 years, Europe have been doing a lot of business with Russia. Putin's Russia.
Let me make a statement.
And when and Russia was doing the same thing that it's been doing, that now it's doing Ukraine in other parts of the world.
Let me tell you
and now it is the bad guy because he attacked Ukraine. I'm not saying that I am with Putin. I'm just saying there is very much hypocrisy in the Western world.
It's not hypocrisy.
When talking about what's happening.
I made it very clear. I made it very clear in the previous statement when it comes to playing dirty games with dirty people.
Yeah.
Yes, the United States or any democracy would be far better than Putin's Russia at playing dirty games. Because you know what, democracy has this inherent feature of reinventing itself, of revisiting its policies without threatening its own existence. If Putin happens to come back from Ukraine, Putin will find it very hard to sustain its control, to maintain its control over Russia. But Biden withdrew its forces from Afghanistan and accepted its, America's defeat, right, in Afghanistan, and nothing happened to the regime, right? So democracies are good at reinventing themselves, right?
That's true.
And non-democratic authoritarian states, they have some span of life, and you see revolutions happening. Have you ever seen any revolution happening in some democracy, established consolidated democracy? I don't recall of any revolution in a consolidated democracy. I mean consolidated democracy. Another thing, America being accused of supporting some General Zia or Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. I reiterated that. Now, last statement. I reiterated that in this dirty global Hobbesian game that we on the global arena have been cursed to play, democracies too unfortunately play dirty by choosing lesser evils against the bigger evils. And now it looks like that we have talked a lot.
I would say usefully.
Okay, you have got let me be a moderator right now.
Yes.
You got 3 minutes to conclude it, and then we will give 3 questions,
Okay.
3 or 5 questions. You got, this is the final step.
I have just a point to this. First of all, I'm not against democracies and democratic systems. I'm just saying that democratic systems nowadays are not fully democratic if we think in terms of what happens on the ground. I mean, of course they are democratic on the paper, and for certain things, but then you have to check all all the factors. The other thing is that I'm an utopist, and I would really like people to think not in terms of power. I mean, if I have to imagine a future for our planet that is sustainable, going back to my field, it cannot be thought in terms of big powers and big differences in power and privilege, because that brings to societies in which we have big privileges, people that are much richer than other people, a few people that are much richer than the majority, and then the majority become a minority because they don't have power. This is the problem. And going back to what my countries, my Western world is doing to the planet, that is consumerism, capitalism, in order to have a lot of things that we don't need, like big cars, big houses, a pair of shoes, changing a pair of shoes every month, and expensive mobiles and so on, we are exploiting the rest of the world and the planet and the natural resources. And that is where I think that there are big privileges and big powers that play a very dirty game, and in which you cannot even address who is the responsible for certain things, because it's a big machine. And I would really like to think that certain countries in the global south would think about themselves in a different way, that it's not an anti-democratic way, but it's a more democratic way.
Okay, thank you so much, Claudio.